The future's here, it's right before your eyes. Step by step, you're on your way. Welcome to a brighter day. Don't you know it feels good to be alive? You could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted, shoot the moon and reach for Mars. You know you could. Yeah, and times are changing everywhere. Do we dream and do we dare? It's up to you, the door is open wide. Feel the rhythm of today, learn the part and join the play. The world is here, let's take it for a ride. You could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted, shoot the moon and reach for Mars. You know you could. Larger, larger than, bigger, bigger than, living hopes and dreams. Every boy and girl, higher, higher than, brighter, brighter than, all you wanted. You know, you could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You can have all you ever wanted. Hopes and dreams, every boy. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted. You know you could.
Welcome back to the channel, Colombia, and welcome to another Coffee Time Live. And the weather today, it's been pretty hot, but getting better. And if we look out here, you see all that overcast. Those are clouds dropped down to our level because we live in the clouds. It's pretty hazy, but it's cool today, breezy, just pretty awesome. Good video and audio. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that because I never know. Last year, I would run a little advertisement on a number of coffee times about an apartment that was available. And they've been on here as guests. You've seen them before, and they go and travel every once in a while. They've been to Argentina and Portugal and God knows where. And they make videos here in Colombia that are pretty good. And I've mentioned those. Well, he emailed me last night and said they're going away for a couple months on a trip. And so the apartment's going to be open again. And the people that rented it were really happy, gave me feedback. Everybody always gives me feedback, not my apartment, but I said, well, go ahead and throw something together and I will put it on Coffee Time if anybody's interested. People always are. It's a really nice place and a great location. So they sent me this. I'm going to show it to you. It's about a minute, a little less. Here we go. So there we go. Going to be open for a couple months. It's there if you want it. He didn't put an email on there, so send me an email and I will give you their email. I'll run this next week and I'll make sure I have the email and put it up because, I don't need to be in the middle. So what do we got here? We have from Juka, Mr. Contribution. Thank you very much. Pretty early, and I'm in the midst of something here. There we go. All right. So I thank you very much for that. Google this. You'll find it on YouTube. Oliver Anthony, Richmond, north of Richmond. I'm going to talk about at the end of what I have to talk about today. Juka, greetings from Finland. What time is it there? It's 7 p.m. Okay, I don't know. For some reason, I thought it was even later. John Sawicki. Good morning from Seattle. How you doing? And then we have Rob. Good morning from Fort Lauderdale, Mr. World Traveler. And let's see. There we go. Ron Clark, good video and audio, and I thank you for that. Larky Charms, good morning from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Judy, how you doing, Judy? Good morning, Lauren and all. Turtle, Mr. Brokeleg. Hola, amigos. How you feeling? How you doing? Owen Cash, love the new coffee time sign. Oh, yeah. But the light went out. Shame on me. I'd get up and fix it, but you could see it. All right, let's see. William, how you doing, William? Good morning, folks. Mike Jarvis, everybody knows Mike. And everybody that comes here to visit, they want to go visit Mike. Mr. Anonymous, thank you for the contribution. Greatly appreciated. Victor, hello from Manizales for 3 more days. I didn't know you were there. We'll talk. Mike Carroll, good morning. How you doing? Howling Fang, morning from New York. Okay, we got a full boat here. So I've got a couple just local things to mention, and then I've got a few news stories in Colombia, and then the title said chaos in Ecuador, but this is going to be a talk about what's going on in Ecuador, how it relates to Colombia, where did this all come from, where is it going? A lot of people interested in this, especially the assassination that just happened. So we're gonna talk about that. See if I can give you a little history and perspective. Sugar Skull, how you doing? Been a while. Me, Mister, where income produced outside Colombia? Huh? Okay. So first of all, the Gringo Meetup for Coffee, which I talked about last couple of weeks, which I do not want to administrate and I will not administrate, is to be Tuesdays, 11 a.m. And I'll show you the location because I went there to meet up with Mark this week. I was actually going to be in that neighborhood, and so I said, hey, if you're not busy, come on down. We'll chat a little bit. So we chatted for a couple hours, and then we ended up going to lunch together. So let me show you the place. Very nice place. There's beautiful coffee shops like this all over the place. And Manizales also, just awesome coffee shops. So here it is. There's another place where William took me that makes the same kind of mochachinos. They're not sweet. As a matter of fact, if you like sweetened coffee, you might want to add sugar. I actually like them the way they are. They're made with cacao. They're not made with any kind of chocolate syrup or anything. They're just made from the raw cacao, which is really tasty. It's a very different taste. And they're not the kind that you get at McDonald's where they try to fill it up with 8 inches of whipped cream. And they're not like that at all. Very tasty. And you can taste the coffee in them. So it's very nice. So we went from there. The reason I was there is I was told about this guy who I tried to get on for today to interview, but he's not returning the calls. But I was told that he's from Texas, and that he opened up this place down the street from this coffee shop that has genuine, authentic smoked barbecue like they make it in Texas. And it's called Amarillo or Amarillo, Texas. And his girlfriend is a local girl. She's very, very sweet. He wasn't there. I told her that I want to interview, and I'm just not getting any. I sent a message and just not getting anything back. So let me show you. I took a quick clip of the place. Let me show you that. What was on that plate is I had a salad, some corn, as you saw. There's pulled pork, and then there was smoked brisket. And I'll give you a quick review. The pulled everything, they're not very busy. They opened a couple months ago. Everything I could tell had been cooked maybe a few days before. The pulled pork was very tasty, and it was not dry at all. The picture kind of looks dry. It wasn't dry at all. The brisket was a home run. That was really, really tasty. While you can get barbecue ribs and things like that here in Armenia, and some of them are actually very good. He's also got ribs, but his brisket, I've never seen anywhere in Armenia like that. And that was very good. It was especially good. So if you like, smoked with a smoke ring and the kind of the bark on the outside, if you like that kind of thing, it's there. He also makes some homemade barbecue sauces, sweet and also a spicy one. And he sells those under his own label. So they are there. I also found that restaurant on my Rappi account. So I ordered up some pulled pork, and it came, and it's better to go there in person. But I'm concerned that he needs to get busier so he has more of a turnaround. Because it's too expensive to just throw out, but how long are you going to keep it? And well, I didn't have any issues with it and it was all good. It's something I thought about. You know, it's like, man, you gotta get busy here. It's kind of tucked away at the end of this road, and unless you knew it was there, it's not very likely that you would ever just accidentally stumble into it. So you have to know about it. I think it's worth checking out. I think it would be better if they were a little busier and they had more of a turnover. But that being said, that brisket was killer. Let's see. Bill Beebe, hello from Santa Marta, flying to Armenia on Tuesday. Hello and welcome. Libby, hello, this time from trip to Machala, Ecuador. Yeah, you're making it look good. I saw some of your photos from there. I've been there a few times. I always thought it was an armpit. And I noticed you said the iguanas are all missing, which is very strange because it's one of those places they pride themselves on iguanas everywhere, great big ones. At one time, somebody had poisoned some, and she thought, you know, maybe that happened again. I don't know. Didn't we already mention that one? All right. Best coffee you ever tasted. I can't say that anymore. There's so many good coffees. It's the nice thing is I don't think I've ever had even an average cup of coffee here. I don't think it's possible. Dan, smoked brisket. Yeah, it was definitely good. It was worth the time. All right, so next thing here, locally, here in Candio, there's been 25 fires. I've never seen it dry here, and I won't say it's exactly dry, but last week and the week before, temperatures for here were quite high. You know, they were up in the high 80s, which is records. We had several broken records. So there's been a couple fires, and 25, and they're mostly in. They said 7 locations. One place is Salento, down in Inova and Pijao, Buena Vista, in those areas in the south, and Salento. We got a little rain yesterday, and it feels like it might rain today. I mean, I haven't looked at anything to help me. Just, you know, it's kind of got that smell and feel. So, you know, that'll be good, but it's very, very, very unusual for here. And this next one, people are always talking about the value of the peso. I thought this was kind of interesting. This is actually about peso in Venezuela. Now, what's been going on in Venezuela for a number of years is because the Venezuelan money is worthless. The dollar, the American dollar, has been the exchange paper of desire in Venezuela for quite a while, because it's held and maintained its value. And now it's being superseded by the Colombian peso, because the Colombian peso has been more stable than the American dollar. And with the border being opened again for Colombia, a lot of Venezuelans have been going back and forth. They've been coming back with Colombian pesos in their pocket. And so now the exchange paper of desire is the Colombian peso. There's still, of course, dollars is like a close second, depending. And the Bolivar is somewhat there's a good chance that in some of the bigger cities, if you have Bolivars in your pocket, that, you know, they'll take those. But definitely the Colombian peso is the money of choice right now in Venezuela, which says, why is it so stable? Because we're having the inflation and all that. I think it's kind of interesting. There's no sign that because of financial problems, they ran out and printed more money. There was another unrelated article that I thought was kind of interesting. The Secretary of the Treasury, who signs the money, just like in the United States, he's been in office for a year, and he hasn't signed any yet because they set up the printing schedule of the money, and if anything, it's gone slower than expected. He thinks that sometime the end of this year, next year, they'll be into the next run of money, the scheduled run, because they do replacement money, and he'll finally get to sign money. In the U.S., the guy, the Secretary of Treasury hits the ground, and 3 days later, you find in circulation money with his signature on it. So it's heartening to know that they have the ability to print their own money, but they have discipline not to do it. Just try to short-term fill in some gaps. Let's see. Biggest problem I've seen in Venezuela with using the dollar, it's almost impossible for them to make change. Makes sense for them to switch. What's happened is it's gone on long enough now that they have the change. There's places that are operating like in Caracas or Merida. They're operating like you go into a store and it's going to be an exchange in dollars. Well, now it's going to be an exchange in pesos. Plus, that's much more convenient for them because Colombia's next door. But if you go in the cash register, they'll have dollars and the coins and all of that. So, out of desperation, they worked out their own monetary system, and the dollar is being supplanted with pesos for a whole bunch of reasons. But it's been very stable. The access to it is better. So just found that interesting. If you're from the USA, you really can't or shouldn't go to Venezuela. So, I won't experience it firsthand. But as soon as some of the stuff clears up, as soon as they stop arresting people from the USA as spies, I'd like to make that a trip. Okay. It's some more Petro news.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Oh my God!
I'm a fan of the Petro news. He's getting blasted. There was a bunch of editorials over the last handful of days because of his son and the corruption and, him denying that he knows anything to do with it. He's getting slammed because they're saying he's a crap father, that he didn't do anything but spoil his son, ignored him, and he showed up for his graduation, gave him a car, but didn't have a hand in his upbringing. He's getting slammed all over the place for being complicit, but also the fault of why his son is so corrupt. But this right here, I thought was kind of interesting. He gave a little speech a couple days ago. And in this speech, he's got the same disease I see in the news in the U.S. You get, a president that comes out and proclaims certain things that has absolutely no basis in fact or reality, and people in the news, they just start repeating it as though it were something real. Well, he came out and he said that the cost of groceries for the average Colombian family has been decreasing. And it shows that, everything's getting better. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's not decreasing. It's still going up. If he meant to say, which he didn't say, he was very clear about what he was trying to say. He's saying that our expenses are going down, but they're not. The rate of inflation has been going down as it's going down worldwide. As that goes down, that means the increase slows down. But it's not going down. Things keep going up. And plus, even once it does get to the point where it's not going up, there'll still be some months where things kind of want to stabilize, where some things didn't get raised but should have, but they didn't dare because they didn't want to lose sales. All that's going to come together. So there was an article on this. Well, this article, it said, well, the month of July, the rate of inflation was 12.13%. But this article got a hold of a handful, I think 7 economists here in Colombia, and they said what I just said, but they said that even if inflation reverses itself, it'll take 6 or 7 months before people feel the effect of it. So he got called out on his crap, and he got called out on it really quick. And all it's doing is making people all the more angry with him. Just last week, he's been popular in Bogota. He got a lot of votes in Bogota. He was a mayor of Bogota at one point. And last week, hundreds of thousands of people turned out to protest him and his policies. So makes my day. Gratified to see it. All right. How are we doing here? All right, let's get on to the main topic. I'll start with a rapid increase, an exponential acceleration of home invasions in Cuenca. Now, when I lived there, there were home invasions. It wasn't unusual at all. I mean, it wasn't a week that went by where you didn't hear about it, particularly preying on people like lived out up in the hills in Vilcabamba. It was a pretty common thing. And what always came up in conversation there is that, well, guns are illegal, so at least the criminals don't break in and, you know, they have to break in with a machete or something. And it just baffles I just can't comprehend how people could say something like that, because it's been said forever that if the guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. So I would think that no matter what your political views may be, you would have at least have heard that before. And that's the case in Ecuador. Guns are outlawed there. Guns are not outlawed here. And I keep seeing that people are confusing Ecuador and Colombia. You can get a permit and have a gun and like that. I'm not saying it's easy, but you can do it. If you're determined to, you know, I had a permit in New York. It is not easy getting a permit in New York. It's one of the toughest places in the country. Well, Colombia is something along those lines, but you can get it. But in Ecuador, they outlawed it. The only people permitted legally to have guns are farmers, and they're only allowed to have these antiquated shotguns. I think they're like single shot shotguns, something along those lines. So, you know, people are kind of prey. Well, just, I think this was yesterday in Cuenca, they caught a couple people associated with some home break-ins, which is nice to see. This was their stash. These are the guns that nobody will have if only they outlaw guns. Criminals can get these things, no problem. And those sawed-off shotguns are pretty wicked. So I just thought I would throw that out there. Now, if you didn't hear about this, you've been living under a rock. They're going for presidential elections in Ecuador. And they do runoff type of elections. So right now, I think there's something like, oh, I don't know, maybe 7 or more presidential candidates. And the two with the most votes in the primaries get to run against each other for president. I'm simplifying it, but that's basically it. So, the goal is to, get as many votes as you want. Well, this guy was kind of middle of the pack, but he was an enemy of the cartels. And I'm going to show you a news clip that's a few minutes long. And the reason I'm going to show you this news clip, the entire clip, is the guy that's on as a guest speaker. And I don't know, it's CBS News or NBC or I don't know which one. But the guy who's on as a guest speaker knows what he's talking about, and he hits some really good points. And then I want to describe where this is all coming from. What's the history of this? But let me show you this clip and pay attention to what this guy has to say.
Ecuador's presidential elections will proceed as planned, despite a candidate being shot and killed at a campaign rally yesterday.
That shooting was caught on video. A warning here, the footage you're about to see is disturbing. Police say Fernando Villavicencio had campaigned against cartels and corruption. The Attorney General's office said one suspect died of injuries sustained in a shootout. 6 others have been arrested. Ecuador's current president suggested organized crime was behind the murder. He has declared 3 days of national mourning and a state of emergency.
Will Freeman from the Council on Foreign Relations joins us now. He's a fellow for Latin American Studies. Well, a criminal gang called Los Lobos is claiming responsibility for the attack. What can you tell us about them?
Well, Los Lobos is one of the 2 biggest gangs in Ecuador that has emerged over the last few years as the country has become increasingly an important hotspot for trafficking Colombian and Peruvian cocaine to the United States, to Europe, and to Asia. They work in league with the Mexican New Generation Jalisco cartel, and in this fight for control of the criminal underworld in Ecuador, which has turned increasingly bloody, Los Lobos have started to emerge as one of the dominant players. Now, as you mentioned, they've claimed responsibility for this killing, but it's really too soon to know who or what structure has been behind the assassination. Many in Ecuador are skeptical that this is the full story, and the bottom line is, before there's an independent investigation, we won't know who is behind this tragic killing.
And we should be clear, because Villavicencio was one of the few politicians to allege links between organized crime and the Ecuadorian government. What kind of history did he have with crime leaders, let's say, up until yesterday?
Villavicencio was one of the better-known investigative journalists in Ecuador. He'd built this career over the last 10 to 15 years. Somewhat of a maverick. He was famous for going on social media, revealing evidence of corruption in the government. During the years of ex-president Rafael Correa, this even got him into a situation where he had to flee into exile to Peru to avoid going to jail. But for a lot of Ecuadorians, he became known as a politician who was willing to call these things out. Now, he springboarded from journalism into Congress. He continued denouncing corruption, but increasingly he turned his focus to these powerful organized crime groups. Ultimately, he focused his campaign message on rolling back the capture of the state. Unfortunately, it's the situation in Ecuador that Los Lobos, Los Choneros, other gangs increasingly control parts of the judiciary, the prison system. They've infiltrated the police. Really, Villavicencio was the only candidate who was calling for an intelligence-based response to this problem of state capture. Just days ago, he said that his life was at risk, that he was being threatened by Alias Fito, leader of the Choneros gangs. And he said, though, that he wasn't afraid, that he'd been confronting these criminal structures for 20 years. Unfortunately, though, Ecuador today is not the Ecuador of 10 or 20 years ago. The country's in a much, much worse spot, and this assassination proves it.
You're bringing up that point, Will, about Quito today versus Quito in the past. And as you were talking about Colombia and a lot of these Latin American countries have had to deal with violence, perceptions of violence. And as this assassination has garnered a lot of international attention, I'm wondering what type of impact this has about perceptions of safety, not only in Quito, but also in other Latin American cities, especially as people in these areas have worked so hard not only to combat crime, but also to combat these perceptions.
I'd argue crime is the new inequality. It's the new corruption. It's the political issue today that dominates elections and dominates conversation across Latin America. During the pandemic, everything stopped in Latin America except for organized crime. We've seen cartels in Mexico expand their footprint. We've seen gangs in other countries, not only Ecuador, there are others, begin to co-opt parts of the state. And really, it's turning to political leaders, to stand up to this. Villavicencio was one of few who's been willing to really call out this problem for what it is. So, increasingly, I think we're going to see politics focusing on this issue. And I just hope that the politicians providing answers are interested in mounting a response based on intelligence gathering, based on dismantling criminal structures, on finding oftentimes the business figures behind them, figuring out where the money goes. It's not enough to just fight back against the foot soldiers of these gangs. The worst possible thing we could see in this situation is if one or two gang members is convicted for this killing, but we never really find out what was the larger structure behind it.
All right, Will Freeman, thank you.
And he really nailed it when he said that during the pandemic, everything was shut down. Everybody was kind of locked in, but the criminals, they kept